am the agent of a control corporation, and, like you, face grotesque, ruthless, cruel characters and situations who usually appear harmless and pleasant, but in fact are perverse and putting on a charade. I am, admittedly, a manipulator and coordinator of symbol systems, an expert on all phases of interrogation, brainwashing, control, and I've constructed the following, so that yes, you will forget you are under control. Some have called me a control fanatic, a poet, a seer, a true human virus who uses telepathy to govern the masses. After all, it is the theater, it is life, and you have paid for the treatment you are now to receive. The network is the dark laboratory of control. The network is the bright laboratory of freedom. I am the one person in this world with a million separate bodies. You are that person in the world made up of a million separate bodies. You are a separate body, never alone with the millions of others that are around you. A viral entity that can control the entire planet through contamination. I'm not sure I should go on. You can leave if you want now. You can. Now, look at those exit signs. Now, they just might not be exit signs, but you're welcome to go. Or shall we carry on with the next episode? Still gripped by the illusion of a horizon, we feed the system with a data set of 15,000 ideas of God. The generator makes a new belief construct based on the set. Then the discriminator tries to spot the difference between a human-made notion and one created by the generator. The aim is to fool the discriminator into thinking that the new belief is not only real, but amplifies the wish fulfillment of the ideas of God. Then we have a result. The AI-generated God is one-to-one. Each man, each woman, each being, as my relative Samuel Abu Lafia said, is her, his, whomever's own Messiah. I was speaking with a man importing tea from all over the world. He made such an interesting tea, such an interesting blend of tea, that soon he was selling certain chefs a single cup of his tea, such an intensely aromatic and almost butterly matcha blend. He was selling it for $42 a cup to certain chefs in the city of New York. Tea, he told me, the tea ceremony is about being present to the person in front of you, communing with the other, me being present to you, us to each other, us to all eternity, because all of it is here, now with us. It got me to think about how the world discloses itself to us, to me. What did I mean by the world? Or better yet, how did I sense it? Sense. Time. Being. Things. Intimation. The space between things. The sun. The clouds. Other people. The sea. What animates each of these things and our sense of them? And these things with us, within us, without us. Are you having a tea ceremony with life? Is life the ceremony? I was in Athens last summer, and myself and my family, my 2 kids, we lived on the edge of a hill. We're staying there in an Airbnb, of course, at the Philopopis Hill in the neighborhood of Petrolona. There is, for those of you who've been there recently to Athens, graffiti everywhere. And there is something about it that's, well, it's just perfect. It sets off a kind of degradation in a sense, a city written on, something so present for a city that's so old, a signature of the now written, the now over the past. The hill of Philopopis is rocky, desert-like and sparse, and you walk and you walk and you walk and you walk, and that's something I just love to do when I travel, to walk, to get lost, heading somewhere, nowhere, everywhere. I think, what might appease this storm? Incredibly ferocious. An offering to a god? A conversation with nature? With what powers must I speak? Must I appease? Who is this god of the storm? How can I console this anger, this nature, this appetite, this storm? What have I done for this storm to come to me? Yes, this storm is after me. It wants me. It wants to hurt me. I must propitiate myself to this. This what? What shall I call this wrath? This vengeance? What have I done for this to be happening? How can this be happening to me, to us, simply trying to have a pleasant lunch on tour? Myth was a recognizable medium that helped Athenians shape their identity and strengthen their sense of space. Apollo, the god of light, dream and prophecy, the shining one, visible form, comprehensible knowledge and moderation. Dionysus, the god of intoxication and rapture, formless flux, mystical intuition, excess, the drive to bloody dissolution, annihilation, and a strong and gleeful admission of the terror and meaninglessness of life. The Apollonian, a world of distinct individuals. The Dionysian, a world where separate individual identities have dissolved and human beings find themselves reconciled with the elemental forces and energies of nature. The Apollonian, a world of distinct individuals. The Dionysian, a world where separate individual identities have dissolved and human beings find themselves reconciled with the elemental forces and energies of nature. Through Dionysian rapture, we become part of a living being with its joy and eternal recreation. We are fused. The union of these two artistic powers nature called a mystery and the origin of Greek tragedy. My trip to Greece was a search to understand and gain intuition into this union, and how I had become exiled to myself. How from being mute, I began to sing, to cry, to weep. And with that, I became the Buddha that laughs, present to the great mystery and the great joy of being alive. To give the story perspective, Athens is the image of the rational regime. under the protection of Athena, the goddess of rationality, that replaces the old mythical, religious, and irrational regime. The trilogy of Aeschylus, Agamemnon, the libation bearers, the Eumenides, ends with the entrance of the mythical Orestes into the logical world of Athens. Remember, in Agamemnon, Orestes killed his mother, Clytemnestra, because she, secretly living with her lover, had killed his father. The play concerns the incessant vengeance of these deceits. Athena puts an end to it. In the weeks ahead, we will go to the oracle at Delphi. My 12-year-old son, Roman, and I. Maybe the oracle will tell me of the storms to come, the storms that were raging, always somewhere. What and who is this oracle? To the oracle, these ancients went bearing the most extraordinary gifts. Marble statues, works of gold, tridents, chalices, coins, blingy things, sparkling and shiny and lovely. To have a seance, you bring gifts, strange gifts, like the bruised egos that New Yorkers brought to their Freudian analyst in the 50s, like other Viennese in the 20s brought to America, the dark noir lighting of Fritz Lang, the strange, deranged, precise dances of Mary Wigman, modernist architecture. What else do people bring to the oracles but uncertain desires, ambitions? Now you, audience, must think of yours, because we will be seeing the oracle very soon. As the days and dreams go on, I propose to my wife that we buy an apartment in Athens, that we live here, that we make Athens our home. The idea is so strong to me, so convincing, so real, that now this graffitied town is my town, my home. I live here. I'm so excited thinking of the right place to live, and then I am alone. And strangely in the sky is thunder and lightning, and we close the windows of our Airbnb apartment and retreat inside. How to begin? And to what end? To begin without ending. To begin before beginning. Without ending. To end beginnings and endings. Inside where? Where? Where am I? Where am I? I live here in Athens. And the rain comes, and I am here on the couch in this room in exile. Exile. I just keep thinking about this. It seems to me to be at the heart of everything. Because the exile's always away from something, kept away, willingly or unwillingly, gone away. Banished. Banded. Bothered. Without brother, without mother, without sister, without song, without language, without friends. He is the other, the abject, the contagion, the castaway, the parasite, the unwanted, the unlovable. And nobody wants to love the unloved. Just pile on with all that hate, and vengeance, and scorn, and humiliation, and that abject thing. We just need to kill him. We need to kill that ugly thing. Just kill that pretty thing. You're banished, exiled. It's better than prison or death. You're exile. 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 The verb exile comes from the old French word essayer, meaning banish, expel, drive off. Of course, there are all kinds of reasons for exile, but we can be certain that anyone banished has committed an offense to the powerful. Once the rain cleared, we continued towards the Acropolis. There were hundreds of people from all over, ascending the hill from various sides. It's an extraordinary sight from afar, just glistening marble. I realized we were not simply tourists, but pilgrims. We were on pilgrimage to commune with the gods. We were a community of sorts, perhaps nothing more than a group of tourists on a cruise. Who could say what each of us wanted, what we were in search of, that glimmer or crack in time that showed us, yes, Apollo was here, and Poseidon, and Hermes. And on the vast plateau across the sheltering sky and the sea beyond, we would commune with the heavens and know, even for a second, what it was to be one, not just with others, not just ourselves, but with the whole of time. Wading through the hundreds of people scrambling about, incessantly taking pictures, cameras, photographs, big cameras, phone cameras, video cameras, FaceTime, iPads. Somehow it seemed that in their very taking, they would not only record this eventful moment, but give meaning to it. The meaning perhaps of, look, I am here. I was here. I did this, done that. Me. I marveled at the genius of it all and the insanity of all of us. Or was it the insanity of them and the genius of us? I thought I saw in this atomized mass Socrates and himself. I was in love with him as a physical thing, a man described as unseemly, ugly. What ugliness could be so extraordinary to be remarked on so often? Amidst all this order and perfection, a brilliant, ugly thing, a kind of monstrosity. What was beneath it all? These ruins, this stone, these texts in vases, statues and votive offerings, these immensely ordered buildings and decorative columns. How many people did it take to build such a place? How many slaves, captives, artisans, and engineers? The entire will of the city. I remember being at the Telluride Film Festival talking with the renowned British filmmaker Peter Greenaway. He told me he loved to see the rotten underneath the pristine. The rotten underneath the pristine. The subterranean. What indeed was behind all these ordered columns, behind this brilliant whiteness? Myth or reason? I suppose Miletus, like many sociopathic narcissists, rich to boot, could not stand this ugly gadfly, and simply wanted this menace, who, according to our accounts, was a little too perfect to be real. He was an excellent soldier, could drink everyone else under the table while debating, could devise the ideal state over dinner. Well, this man just had to go, this Socrates. Miletus could not stand someone who says they are wise because they don't know. That was pure lunacy. And so, by public trial and 30 votes of a jury just over 500, our old boy was sentenced to death. Death. The big question. I remember my bearded poli-sci professor looking like Marx, professing on Marx, writing on the blackboard, death. Without death, no life. And so now, Socrates would have to show himself. The man pronounced by the Oracle of Delphi to be the wisest of all men. Well, wise because he said he didn't know anything. Socrates would now have to speak forth. He would have to speak forth about the excellence of the soul and the uncertainty of death. Because whatever lied behind that door, angel or devil, eternity or end, he did not know. But go there he would, with open arms and open heart. There is something insolent and arrogant about Socrates. His mock humility seems a form of suicide. There's something disturbing and provoking about Socrates' performance here. Honestly, I think Morrissey is our contemporary Socrates, always questioning the beautiful, the just, the jealous, the state, sexual desire. Really, the more I think about it, yes, Socrates has come back as the beautiful in Stephen Morrissey. This ground from which everything becomes and is becoming, from which we appear and know ourselves and losing ourselves, a community formed around music, formed as the participants, the individuals dissolved in the face or abyss or maw of the chaotic. Yes, the ugly, dreadful awe of this immense thing, the ugly, the unshapely, the unruly, the ill-formed nature would be given form by men and gods. Gods being powers we would shape and form. It is interesting to note that every Greek myth is ultimately connected in a chain of association with every other Greek myth, just as the parents of the gods whose children destroyed them are in turn destroyed by their children. And it is this cycle of vengeance that is stopped by Athena. These new Olympians are the gods we know. They are us as gods, with shape and character and outsized appetites. Gods who interact with us make demigods. These gods, like us, had control over many different aspects of life on Earth. The ancient Greeks built great temples and sanctuaries to their gods. They held festivals in their honor, with processions, sports, sacrifices, and competitions. These gods were mean, angry, pleasant, cruel, loving. They fell in love with each other, argued with each other, and even stole from each other, rape and storm and narrativized the world with hundreds of appetites. This dread comes more and more into focus. It becomes a person, a god. This dread, this appetite, this unreason, these forces of nature in time become more and more into focus. They become a person, a god, like you and me, in the image of you and me. It was not at first so much our desire to be like gods as it was to be propitious to them, with them, for them. But of course we would have to, someday, kill them. Our aim is not the God's eye view, but the God's eye power to shape and control reality. Like someone told me the other day, having just returned from a conference in the Ukraine, the future of everything. I asked about climate change, and the person brusquely said, "Oh, this crowd, they don't care about that. They just want to upload themselves to the matrix and live forever." But as we know, humans can change things intentionally. But half the time we don't quite get what we intend. Imagine that you're walking into this temple with all of these beautiful columns up the stairs and inside another chamber. And as you move further and further inside, shadows play against the walls, flames flicker, and you think you see an altar, and this shape to the back of you like a Goya painting, darkness within darkness, so black. But still you see, and you make sounds, and you shiver at these sounds, a horrible, delightful, ravenous sound. There, you think you see in this darkness, women, all naked, with matted hair, tearing a little child to pieces, hags tearing apart broken-hearted child. Two old hags in the sanctuary are dismembering a living child above a basin. Well, that's the image that Nietzsche ends The Birth of Tragedy with. That is nature, with its horrible, delightful, ravenous, volcanic tornado of sound and sounding of being. Naked, with matted hair. That's it. That's climate change. That's atmosphere. That's the horrible, delightful, ravenous sound. Concealed by the light of Apollo, the Greeks created beautiful works of art, precisely because, according to Nietzsche, they glimpsed into the abyss of life and saw it for what it is, that life lives on other lives. Life tears life apart. And the necessary compensation for this is to create beautiful works of art. Beauty, aesthetics, is the only reason to live. There's nothing else but beauty. The beautiful is rooted in the dark mystery of the apprehension of the horror of life, of the contingency of life, the inevitable end of it, its awesomeness, its grandiosity,
its complete indifference to us, all of it shattering, frightening, terrifyingly big, all too much. In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche says that life can only be justified insofar as it is an aesthetic phenomenon.
An extraordinary and insanely beautiful thing to say. It is only as an aesthetic phenomenon that exists as the world are eternally justified. Life finds meaning in only through art. Does that astound you? Life finds meaning, according to Nietzsche, only through art. Life itself, it's life, all of life, the whole of creation's only meaning is to make life, which is art.
And with that, when you look upon this world, are you not astounded by it? And yourself? Whatever is going on is having a hugely wonderful, indifferent, amoral time. All of it is for itself, as itself, and at every scale.
And you pitiful herd, have not the courage just to see this, be this. But make no mistake about it, it's terrifying, because you, me, just doesn't matter. Which simply means it all does matter in the way you want it to. Don't be so sure, says Socrates. You don't know, it just doesn't matter. Or what matters is to just be, or to live the examined life. Tragedy can only be birthed through form in time. In its increasing self-awareness through form in time, can only turn away from the tragic that it has tamed. Form in time contained the tragic, birthed it, allowed it to express itself, allowed it to be spoken, to be seen, to be felt. The form of tragedy, the form itself, the Apollonian, mitigated the very tragic it could contain and express. Tragedy in time must become ironic, mannerist. It must turn on itself, or turn around itself, round and round as in Hamlet. The Acropolis stands as the central repository of the Athenians' conception of themselves. It is an extraordinary temple complex, not unlike Angkor Wat or Borobudur. You can imagine the many people of Athens day to day seeing from afar this extraordinary sight. And those days when one walked the slope in public processions, where along the way are numerous small altars, sanctuaries lining the path to the Acropolis, where votive figurines, the chori, marble statues of young women carved in different sizes with their austere body posture. These figures placed to please the gods, the goddess Athena, this to bring them into conversation with oneself and these gods. Each, when properly cared for, would confer on its followers a caring for them, a beneficence, a benefit, a conversation with the god, a conversation with those around you in love and adoration, in fear and enchantment, in participation of its cult. A people were bound together, deepening the collective. They would share a cultural experience, providing healing rituals for the social problem of death. The ritual would involve music, dance, drama, and performance. The entire social group would be involved. Pain and grief would be transmuted into the joy of performance. The creation of beauty, the healing rhythms of dance and song, story and poetry, not forgotten, but changed and changed together. No longer recurrent, terrifying fantasy of the solitary victim, but the newly transformed addition to the culturally shared reality. A reality consensus in which a society was formed. Every city had its main god, but not to the exclusion of others. Alongside Athena and Athens, for instance, there were a number of other gods with various liturgies and rites that were practiced. Yet, as time progresses, certain archaic or ancient rites lose their potency. The high, the novelty is gone, the efficacy gone. So they merge, get spliced up with others, lose their self-consciousness, their immediacy, their spell, the enrapture transformed and transposed. They upgrade after all. All gods must produce desired effects, and priests and politicians their control. In time, certain sacrifices, rituals, and cults are contested, pushed to the fringe, go underground, and eventually banished by greater control systems. We see this brilliantly shown in Pasolini's film version of the play Medea, and of course, William Burroughs' The Unspeakable Mr. Hart, and all our tech companies today, thirsting for the singularity, the thrush of time defeated. What good is a god if it can't be daddy, 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 daddy? As does Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, a filthy rich American social media tycoon, whose Russian spite algorithmic control machine, fueled by the latest neuroscience, feeds a plague-riddled apocalypse, a monstrous offspring of Fox News to buy time for more time. The high priest teaches his editors the tricks as they crawl up his ladder, making hands tremble and sweat from those coming over the wall. They love feeling the dear meretricious pour, wriggle, and slobber, making people ugly and grinding their faces in it. See the action of Peter Thiel, this soul-searching tycoon with this
dark side to his character, his instrument of control, one of a number of billionaires obsessed with discovering the means for achieving immortality. Using images of fear and death, he increases his control. However, he devalues time and invokes an implacable enemy. Young mutant heroes using the same patented formula travel through time, bringing biologic plagues from the remote past to destroy him, and his Judeo-Christian immoral temporal reality. Just as all cults, the appropriation of word image likes are the control indices to rearrange and control the imaginative synapses. Human sacrifice uses the cut-up technique to dismember these relations, seeking to short-circuit them in lines of flight, becomings, and war machines. In this sense, the young mutants share a common enemy, and an enemy with many names: globalization, late capitalism, psychoanalysis, representation, Mr. Musk, Mr. Page, information, statistics, data analysis, word viruses. All of these are the names of today's control. I later learned laments are sung by the women of the house and the closest neighboring women, often professional lamenters, while swaying their bodies rhythmically. They are divided into 3 stages. Sung at the traditional wake in the house before the burial, during the burial procession, and at the tomb, as I was told later. The laments constitute a ritual which is considered as a social duty in most villages, and the lamenters arrive automatically as soon as a person has died without being invited by the family of the deceased. A funeral cult is a body of religious teachings and practice centered on the veneration of the dead, in which the living are thought to be able to confer benefits on the dead in the afterlife, or to appease the otherwise wrathful ghost. Rituals were carried on for the benefit of the dead, either by their relatives or by a class of priests appointed and paid to perform the rite. From the 6th century onwards, legislation was introduced in Athens and other city-states aiming at the restriction of mourning of the dead, particularly women's lament, which by expressing pain, frustration, and anger was a powerful challenge to social order. The state's need to raise a standing army meant that death had to be glorified, not lamented. Cicero defined religio as cultus deorum, the cultivation of the gods, the cultivation necessary to maintain a specific deity with that god's cult, and required the knowledge of giving the gods their due. Religion is nothing other than the cultus of God. Gods gave form to contain an excessive love, allowing love to be infinite but bound. They gave us permission to love unequivocally, to love ecstatically, to love with all of ourselves, to love as a mystery. The mystery, protecting our loving, keeps it, if you like, innocent, or rather without judgment. Because this God, this unknowable knowable, this divine thing, this intuition of a divine everything, can only be intuited, felt, never known,
known absolutely, so we can love without being disappointed, without asking anything in return but the exuberance of love, of being in the world as divine, as something that receives love unconditionally. We are loved, loving in love with love, imbued with love. Since the loved one can never be quite known, our devotion to this God is really a delicious love affair with ourselves, extended into love. This love is our one and only lover, a dream, both preventing us from sleeping and inhibiting us to waken from it. In and around this love are all kinds of propitiations, because as humans, we will always measure that love, ask of that love for something in return. Love, as an exchange in turn, makes us take accounting of our love, to ask ourselves how well we have loved and how well we have been loved. We ask, what can we do to increase the love we are given? In contrast is the love that is without want. Pure loving can only be that of a saint. It is a love without appetite. It is a beatific love, perhaps narcissistic, nihilistic. How can love not have an aim? This profusion of sea, stone, wind, and sky is so seductive, so wild, so dangerous, even so wicked, that deep within me, I can feel it had to be some very strong, very clever people to navigate all this, to make it social, to make it fecund, furious, and immensely marvelous. Why not name this beautiful, insane thing Poseidon, the god of the sea? You feel the fury, the ferociousness. Imagine the seductive conjuring it would take to ride or calm this fury, to take it in your hand and feel its beauty, to console it and calm it. Purring, roaring, devouring, furious at the Cycladian nymphs. Poseidon turned them into islands. Tourism is no doubt our contemporary pilgrimage. Yet it all seems so cuddled, there oblivious to there, like rock climbing in a gym with your trainer or tour guide beneath you. The pilgrimage doesn't look at fury, not the fury in ourselves, but protectively, unexaminingly, in a selfie. At the edge of our all too big, all too safe, monstrously sized boat, I can see bobbing, glistening, a small, single fisherman under a crackling light. A Van Gogh potato eater's light, lighting up a coarse face against the purple, blackish, dark sky. The boat, a thimble size next to ours, rolling up and down, I can see a discreet votive candle in a glass box, visible as the purple-black sky dimmed, a saint. Yes, a saint. The saint, a companion, someone close to me, watching me, talking to me, under this vast, incomprehensible, inexorable night sky, indefatigable as the lights go dim and dimmer, my saint, my love, watch out for me, for there are those that want to do me harm. My saint, my love, watch out for me, for there are those that want to do me harm. And me, on that boat, that big boat ferrying across the sea, here it comes. Here comes the night, and over the loudspeakers I hear, sing us our favorite song. Nobody loves us. Born-again atheists practicing troublemakers make us our favorite jam. Nobody loves us. Useless and shiftless and jobless. We're all yours. We don't get beyond plunder until we get to conciliation. And we can't get to conciliation until we get to God, writing and oracles. And we don't get to that until we get to an analog I narrating in a mind space. That's a lot to think about, right? From plunder to conciliation, to gods, to writing, to oracles. You may know this book, The Origins of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind by Julian James. If you take the generally accepted oldest parts of the Iliad and ask, is there evidence of consciousness? The answer, I think, is no. People are not sitting down and making decisions. No one is. No one is introspecting. No one is even reminiscing. It's a very difficult kind of world. So then, who makes the decisions? Whenever a significant choice is to be made, a voice comes in telling people what to do. These voices are always and immediately obeyed. These voices are called God. This is kind of crazy, right? This is really freaky. So no one is introspecting, no one is even reminiscing. It's a very different kind of world. So then, who makes decisions for people? How are people making decisions? Whenever a significant choice is to be made, a voice comes into their head telling them what to do. These voices are always and immediately obeyed. These voices are called gods. Gods. To Julian Jaynes, this is the origin of gods. Julian Jaynes says, I regard them as auditory hallucinations similar to, not precisely the same as, the voices heard by Joan of Arc or William Blake, or similar to the voices that modern schizophrenics hear. I regard them as auditory hallucinations. Okay, the mind space of consciousness, of a conscious I had not developed. This is why whatever we want to say about the ancient Greeks and all ancient cultures is absurd, because their world is a very different kind of world. Just like in 200 years, our world is going to be seen as a very different kind of world. The spread of writing, the complexities of overpopulation, and the chaos of huge migrations as one population invaded others, these are the obvious causes. And in this breakdown, various things started to happen, including, I think, the beginning of consciousness.
Billy Maines closes his talk with this thought. All of this is most human about us. All of this that is most human about us, this consciousness, this artificial space we imagine in other people and ourselves, this living within our reminiscence, plans and imaginings, all of this is indeed only 3,000 years old. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is less than 100 generations. And from that, I think we can conclude that we are all still very young. Thank you very much. He closes his talk. I find this closing more exciting and extraordinary because I keep thinking that we are just at the beginning of something. And no matter how dark it gets, we are going to carry on. We will become something else. We are just at the beginning. Just at the beginning. We are at the beginning. The mind space of consciousness. Auditory hallucination. The mind space of consciousness. The voices that mind takes fancy. These are the voices of network culture or amplified intelligence. The mind space distinct voices. No, whose mind space? What mind space? People are not sitting down and listening. The origins of consciousness and the breakdown of the camera. Breakdown of the camera. The breakdown. The chaos of huge migrations. One population invading another. The breakdown. How can you know yourself in this right now without narrating in mind space and reminiscing and having yourself narrate all that you've been doing and moving on? What is that mind space? Memory is an external device in this recording machine that I'm recording on. All of this is most human. I was watching this video on the work of the anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon, an American anthropologist who made over a dozen field trips into the Orinoco River to visit the villages of the Yanomamo, one of the world's last isolated Indian tribes. And with it, I could clearly get a sense of a world before gods, a spirit world, a world before larger social groups, before the protocols of conciliation. Chagnon, like other anthropologists, studied the use of living space and how social groups and individuals divided up and utilized it. He would map the Yanomamo's villages with a compass and measuring tape, and thus revealed how social organization was tied to living space. People do not live randomly, but near certain kinsmen. Men must avoid their mothers-in-law and cannot even go near their houses. In one of the villages, he befriends a man named Didi Hiwa, who became one of his best friends and informants. He was a shaman of great renown, had 16 children by several wives, and was an important influence in the village. He is both a shaman and one of the several headmen of his village. Didi Hiwa's life is a never-ending drama involving the Hakura spirits, and in the film we see how he manipulates the Hakura spirits for both good and evil. The Yanomamo manipulate their spiritual world to political ends, to cohere their tribes and bring order to their community. Chagnon tells us that Didi Hiwa was one of the most knowledgeable men he ever met, in any culture, and he encouraged him.
It's a very specific accounting of 1936 Barcelona and the Spanish Civil War. It is one of the best descriptions of a moment in time I have ever read. Of a public no longer of fellow citizens addressing each other by class as in sir or madam, but rather without the protocols of elitism where the anarchist owned the street. For a few months there was a solidarity amongst people, a town where the working class was in the saddle. Strangely, I read Orwell was not popular among fellow British militiamen, who resented his cut-class Eton accent. One said he disliked the supercilious bastard on sight. He really didn't like the workers. I think one could argue that the Spanish Civil War gives us a perfect playbook of the rise of contemporary strongness.
History and myth.
Yes,
But when I
in
looked it
the
up,
end, the
it was
fascists
actually
won
called
because they were stronger. They had more money, more support from the bottom.
I
and
believe,
top.
and in
They
my
had
work
modern arms
implement,
and the others
that the
did.
medium is the
Orwell
message.
saw what Rimbaud did too.
In the
A brief
exhibit, we could
glimpse
see
of
sculptures
possible
and
new
paintings
world.
of Zeus,
Remember, at the age of
Hermes,
15,
Apollo,
Rimbaud was
Dionysus.
surrounded
In
by
the
the
upper floors
detritus
were
of
the
war,
modern
main
depictions of art
soldiers,
style,
smashed
of a
cities,
general
disfigured landscapes. He
or an
reveled in the
anonymous veneer
destruction.
like
I saw a
everybody
sea
and
of
nobody
flames
was
and
in it.
smoke rise
Oil
to heaven,
images,
he later
oil
wrote.
paintings
And
that
left
became
and
black
right,
and
all
white
wealth
and then
exploded
silver.
like a
So in
billion
the exhibit, you
thunderbolts.
start off
At
on the
16,
bottom floor and
Rimbaud,
walk into these
contemporary
very
youth in the midst of
marble
winter,
sculptures,
ran away
Zeus,
from
Hermes,
somewhere
Apollo,
amid the wasteland
Dionysus. And then on the upper floors
experienced a
are modern
revelation.
depictions.
The
The open road and anonymous, everyday people, cold, near painting,
and hungry,
everybody, nobody, everybody from our
frozen heart,
oil
weakness
painting,
or strength.
black and white
You exist.
photography, and then
That is
cinema.
strength.
As we enter
2
the
months
museum,
later,
it's extraordinary to see the works or the media of works through
Saul's
time.
fantasies become
Pottery,
real as the
blocks
capital
of
city's
marble,
core rose up
coin,
with thousands of
tablets,
students and workers
friezes,
in the short-lived
sculpture,
Paris Commune.
onto painting,
For a brief
then
period in
photography.
April and May
The myth,
1871,
which in a sense could be
anarchists
you
were in
or
charge of
me
the
or
capital,
anybody or every
and young
possible
poets
person
were having the police
becoming
force.
the particular.
Rimbaud
To
was
give a
one of
sense,
thousands
there
of
is
young
no historical
vagabonds who flocked
Dionysus,
to revolutionary Paris
Medea.
like moths to a flame.
Each
Remember Pasolini's film Medea? Have you seen Pasolini's film Medea? The first 20 minutes are almost without spoken words. Things happen in a perfectly ritual way. Nobody explains or questions anything, not even when, in the climax of the scene, a young man is ritually killed, his body cut into pieces, his flesh spread all over the fields and buried there, so that the plants can grow, after which the bones of the sacrificed body are burned in a holocaust that awakens the dead, and for a limited time overthrows the political order of the community. We see the people spitting in the faces of the royal family and humiliating the priestess and her religion. It is an evocation of archaic peasant religion, put forward as the true pagan religion. It is the real mythical truth, opposed to the rational truth of the Greeks, of Jason, Medea's antagonist. The real politic of Jason and his aspiration to arrive at the kingdom that had eluded him and his father for generations has no bearing, no condition, nor truth for Medea, whose truth will tragically destroy the real. This pragmatic arrangement means nothing to the religious truth of Medea. Medea's vengeance is the revenge of the mythos, the true pagan religion taking on the unreligious rationality, the logos of the Greeks. The evocation of the true pagan religion remains without words, words so easily manipulated, words that mediate reality and change it. Medea lives in the divine, and Jason in the worldly. The dispute between the two continues today. Early morning, I descend into the sea, a cove making a gorgeous bath under a canopy of stone. Rocks jutting up hundreds of meters, licked by the sea. Each rock more complex, more inscrutable. I've been here a long time, this rock says to me. As the superabundant star above pours out gold into the sea, I am in awe. To float beneath this monumental minerality, the wealth that was from them, the weapons, the cities built on them, this geologic record and the stars above, and the sea and wind. The landscape here staggers me. What people, such rugged, clever, fierce, fearless, fearful people. All of us, really, all of us humans. For a brief moment, I am the primordial being itself. I feel this unbounded greed and lust for being. I am one with this immeasurable delight in existence and receive an intimation, a Dionysian ecstasy, that this delight is indestructible and eternal. Heaven is a place where nothing ever happened. Heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. That's because it is all happening here. Nietzsche, I think, loved humanity too much. He longed for us to come to ourselves, to our senses. The unknown for the Greeks was human nature and nature itself, unchanging. But they lived happily with infinity and mystery rather than with dread, like the monotheists did. One huge con. For Nietzsche and countless poets, progress and reason brought on the worst in us. The God part gone, the herd part here. The crowd that believes they are individuals in their Instagram post. A device that turns all of us inside out into one horde. We are all individuals with no individuality at all. Unlike the ancient Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, the Indians and Chinese, and unlike Christians too, the ancient Greek funerary cult was a hero cult, and the hero was worshipped at a shrine for his power to assist the living. That is, its emphasis was on life, here and now. Not just the power of life, but the particulars of a life. This one and only life, your life. The Greeks did not believe in an afterlife as something that you were living for, that all things would come to a just
end. If you follow their gods through time, this becomes astoundingly clear. And what becomes clearer is that with monotheism, this all ends. Same with Buddhism. In other words, there is this very brief period in human history where people saw themselves as gods, and that, I think, is an extraordinary, amplified, exalted vision to have.
There are two long gray couches in the room and various chairs spread about with young people languoring about. Listening as it is now for hours, smoking cigarettes, feels like Paris, 1968. All eyes are riveted on Antoine Artaud, who on the couch is languidly speaking, drawn into himself, smoking, knowingly speaking while his double with me is outside. But inside the room with a dark top hat, a Peruvian medicine man is wearing all black with red brocade, Artaud's double. I can't say I know what any of it means, but the whole Greek thing shifts now to be so many other places, so many other people. This is all before the speed of light, the speed that does not merely transform the world, it becomes the world. Globalization is the speed of light, and it is nothing else. Globalization cannot take shape without the speed of light. All these varied places alone to themselves, without their own gods and cultures. Life can go this way, that way, and this way, and then again here and there. Some had hoped that the displacement of God, however far from memory, would be rekindled within the metaphysical aspect of nature, allowing us to regain a spiritual, secular, redemptive ethos, and returning to the all of nature as ourselves, as part of nature, as nature is dead today. Nature is dead, pronounced by thousands of anonymous scientists considered mad by the general public. In our propagandized media sphere, the rationalists are now mad and the harbingers of apocalypse sane. So angered are they that they send out pipe bombs to those that make them mad as hell. God won't take it anymore, and indeed God must not be dead. He resides, the great white open. Nietzsche said, not only to the rejection of a belief of cosmic or physical order, of absolute values themselves, to the rejection in this matter, the loss of an absolute basis for morality leads to nihilism. Nihilism is that for which Nietzsche worked to find a solution by reevaluating the foundation detailed in a red tape. He said he no longer wished to kill the people within the shell, wished to teach them to farm instead, to learn why his God betrayed the gospel of his God, and return to the evil ways of Venus. He stows away inside Alessandro's giant floating stone head, and travels beyond the invisible barriers to a man full of a singularity. There he convinces me to defeat 4 great gunmasters, to become the greatest gunman on land. It seems oddly strange to me. It's as if a filter, colorized film is playing, a dream inside the dream, and shuttled back to Greece. Consideration of the degree that sense impressions and intentional consciousness constitutes world promotes the lyrical device drawn from an ecologically sensitive model of encounter, termed enworldment. Through my training with the Overgirl, I feel connected across people, place, and history. I experience a direct awareness of the universe. Oh my. It's not the reality insofar as we make it an object of our ideas, of empirical observations, but reality as it speaks for itself. Everything is nothing else. It's like a beautiful love, right? Everything is everything. There's just nothing else. There's everything out here. Everything. Nothing outside. Nothing outside. This is everything. Everything is everything. There is nothing else. Nothing else. Religion is an intense relation to a nature that does not speak our language, our logos, but the language of reality itself. It lets nature speak as such. Insofar as the logical it is not fixed for the logical definitions we force it into. As it speaks physically, physically, in terms not subjected to other non-logical restriction. Reality is not what it seems. Reality is not what it is. Always something else. It is always something else. Solely. It is not always death as well. It is always death as well. Solely. It is not, but also good solely. Malicious. But also the idea that all is divine. The idea that all does not mean that all is good. Does not mean that all is good, as moralizing religions believe. But that all is good and bad at the same time. That holiness is a malediction as well. That life is death also. That killing the young man is honoring at the same time honoring life's constant resurrection is a central theme. Resurrection is a central theme in Pasolini's vocabulary. That is precisely not a Christian resurrection. That is the final victory over death. On the contrary, it is the affirmation of death as that out of which, again and again, life is being born. As we descend to Cadago and its uninhabited inlet, we can see far into the Aegean Sea on the eastern coast of Crete. All of this renders me speechless. I cannot speak. I am without language, without words. This landscape cannot be apprehended in words. It cannot be seen in a photograph. It cannot be seen through the lens of a camera. It is pure, effervescent sense, a language that decodes the code of reality itself, and is simply present, the divinely present. In a broader sense, we Western modern men, in dropping mythos and embracing logos, just can't see. We Socratic men and women of dialectic and reason, in our instruments and as purveyors of scientific knowledge, do not let reality speak. An appearance of the real. Perhaps a brief flower, a star, but more so a firefly, lit up then gone in one brief dream. Without a sense of the tragic, unwilling to aesthetically listen. We listen, we stand apart from her, placing the whole of life into frameworks of good, bad, fiction, real. We plunge into the water, into this primordial intoxication. I let go of thought, and I am floating in the embrace of the sea that will devour me, devour us. Floating there, I say, ravish me, take me, go with take me. I am you. I am you. It is this presence that is Greece. It is this present to life that goes away in other places, from which we don't know how to recover. At the very least, this is the claim. We gave up the satyr, the Dionysian, for the crucified, life for death, zeal for fear. Reason created a veil that obscured the force of life, the obscenity of nature, its relentlessness, its insidious indifference to any moral order, its pure appetite. Why does that thunderstorm, that tsunami, that exploding volcano, that roaring wind, that earth that quakes, these networks of mushrooms and bird migrations, when we hear them call songs, do they care for you and me? It is said that without words we cannot think, but in the silencing of the words in our head, perhaps we can feel and use another sense, that sense beneath language, before language, that sense that is human, animal, vegetative, mineral, that sense, that senses. Perhaps our constant visual, auditory, kinesthetic, visceral, and feeling modalities are always so stimulated that we can't feel anything. Or better, we can't sense anything. We are able to think, in quotes, just as a sensor does, just as machine learning does, but we can't sense. Our cognitive processes are dependent on language function. What of our sense? The vibratory, aromatic touch. Perhaps our trauma is the verbal, as it has come to possess us, haunt us, make a theater of our minds. Perhaps my trauma is the looks pleadingly at the audience just for a moment. I cannot control
The intrusive images, feelings, and sensuous comings from these earbuds. It's incredible. It's turned out to be true. I cannot control the intrusive images, feelings, and sensations coming from these headphones. I really hear the voice in my head. It's really in my head. It's really my voice that I'm hearing, that you're hearing, that I hear myself hearing. I'm hearing myself hearing. I hear me. I hear me. I, me, hear me. I hear. Here I am.
We all want to be individuals. We can. We really can. We can. Yes, we can. And what could be better?
The four of us take a long
Nietzsche
walk
says,
through
during
ancient
the
ruin.
longest and
It
most
seems all
remote
these
periods
items,
of the
even in
human
nature,
past,
are a kind
the
of
sting of consciousness was not at all
all
what
of
it
them
is now.
remains of
Today,
volcanic
one
eruption.
feels
In that
responsible
sense, nature
only
is
for one's
historical.
will
It
and
is in
actions,
this moment
and one
when we walk,
finds one's
a
pride
museum
in
of sorts
oneself.
in ruin, a beautiful
Yet during the longest period
accessible
of
to
the
us.
human past,
that staggers
nothing
me.
was more
We
terrible
descend the
than to
rocky,
feel
steep path
that one
down
was
the
still
hills
by
towards the
oneself.
sea. From the top of the
To
cliffs,
be
you see the
alone, to
nestled bay,
experience things
where
by
we go
oneself,
boating for a day.
neither to
It
obey
is
nor
strange
to
while my mind
to
and
be
thoughts are
an
so full of
individual.
history and reflection.
That was not a
And
pleasure, but a
But
punishment.
physically, spiritually
One was
communicating with
sentenced to
and I
individuality.
reluctant to use the word conquer this land, this sea. For us, it is just the pleasures of a place to recreate. It's vacation.
Dionysus, represented by city religions, as the protector of those who did not belong to conventional society.
Over the way,
Thus,
from the
he
sea,
symbolizes
we get to look
the
up at the
chaotic,
cliffs and notice the
the
geometry,
dangerous,
the
and the
colors and
unexpected.
shapes, the
Everything
technique,
which escapes human reason,
We go to the
and
first
which
shop,
can only be
we
attributed
pull down
to
to
the
the when
unforeseeable
Roman dives
action
into the water
of the
from the
gods.
deck rail.
In its fully developed form,
Pierces the clear
his central code imagery shows
while
his
trying
triumphant
rock formation
disorderly arrival
throughout the day.
return,
My thoughts
as if from some place beyond the borders of the known and civilized. His procession is made up of wild female followers, maenads, and bearded satyrs with erect penises.
For me,
Some are
I'm
armed
not
with
natural
fierces,
resources.
some
They
dance,
create
some
the
play
beautiful
music.
ambiance,
God himself is
staggering
drawn in a
beauty.
chariot.
I don't see the obsidian as the rock for my spear, or the land as arrowful, grazing for my herd, or the wind as
Dionysus
energy,
must be
and
the
sea
other
as
side of
transport
grief,
network.
that feeling
My
inside
God.
the arbitrary.
What a luxury
without
to have
reason.
such
That
thoughts.
which makes
My
no
sense of
sense.
the beautiful is
The
all about
diagnosis
pleasure.
of cancer
What a
nurses,
decadent fool.
the terrible
What
suffering,
decadent.
the beauty of her
And
character.
now I am in exile.
Our uncle
Seriously.
struck dead by a
Get
wave.
a hold of yourself.
Our
Not in a
uncle
prison, not on the run, not
Our
on a
aunt
threat.
buried
You
in
are a
the San
privileged
Francisco
man.
earthquake.
You are
Where
blessed.
is the reason in all
You
of
don't
this?
need to watch the
You
news
can cower
because you
in
are not
fear, or
threatened
bring
by
yourself
the news.
into a life that knows this
I
as
take a
already
swim.
given.
I
In
float.
this sense, you don't wait for
I have pretty
lament.
much exiled
You live
myself,
fully in the light of lament.
certainly from all
that
kinds of
which
news
is life.
and current
That's
events.
what makes it
This
beautiful.
does not mean
The
I am
Buddha,
without friends or
Marcus
social
Aurelius, the
company.
Stoics, martyrs,
Simply
ascetics,
means I
saints,
have
all of
retreated
them,
into
each of
myself,
them, how
taking
do they
this
take
room
on life?
with me.
Conversely,
It comforts me.
perhaps conversely,
It makes me
it's
more
not an
human
opposition,
than
but just another
kinder,
approach. How do
more
the scientists,
discerning.
the
The
technologists,
idea of
the
exile comes
singularists,
more and more
the
to be a
rationalists,
thought experiment.
the absurdists, the
I come to think
hedonists,
more and more that my conception of
Take
exile is
our
annihilating.
friend Nietzsche would no
All
doubt
has
say
to
that
void
they
meaning
cannot.
and purpose.
We will, of course.
Why get involved when it comes to no good in any event? Perhaps it's simply a giving up, a running away in disgust at the politics of the United States, of the many authoritarians appearing on the world stage. The things in front of us that we know we need to do but don't. I read this passage from a book. To be a modern nihilist is to be in a relatively well-off position on a spiritual and cultural level, since it supposes a degree of intellectual culture and thus relative prosperity. I have that no street credibility. I am living well. Life is good. I have a generous appetite to digest human. Nevertheless, a little self-loathing is our work to do. Rather than being the exiles being outside without home, despised, taunted, alone, pushed out, lumped up, expelled, without control. I think exile can be that very thing that embraces the world that is, the world as such.
It was a joyous afternoon to be in the sea and under the caves, immense and marvelous. The profusion and proliferation of so much life was insanely intoxicating. All was here, everything, and the more one stopped to breathe and feel and look, it was indeed immense and marvelous. Monotheistic religions see things so radically different.